Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, it's a great day when I can speak with the top 5 earning coach in B2B, someone who's coached 200 startups, 1,000 one-on-ones, released 4 bestsellers, and his most recent attraction selling. For those who are watching YouTube, this is it here. Justin Michael. Justin is the founder of the JMM, the Justin Michael Method 1 and 2, and this is 3 now, attraction selling. And I tell you, for someone who's practiced spirituality, really embraced the law of attraction when it came out early 2000s, and bringing it or fusing it, as he says, into the world of sales and the difference it makes, it's unbelievable. And so, as Justin mentions, he took a risk because this is a topic that I would say some people use the word woo-woo, and he debunked it, and because he lived it, and he has experiences from his early days in the 20s when he wasn't getting the job he wanted, and how he invited music, manifestation, visualization, different energy levels into his life and saw different outcomes. And so years later, he decided to write this book. And I'm so grateful he did, because I know it's going to help many, many people about just adopting a mindset that's service-based, so that they're really leading with the other person. And, when you look at his past work, it's prospecting, right? And cold calling. And so when you can do that coming from a place of gratitude, of love, of service, that's the pattern interrupt. You don't need to, you still need to have an opener and a hook and everything. But when you show up differently from everyone else because you've done the inner work, you're operating at an energy that's aligned to a higher state, you're going to create an experience that's completely different from someone else. And you're also going to feel good at the end of the day, because when you think about sales and cold calling, there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of hangups on you. How can you insulate yourself with positivity and do the inner work so that all that stuff just rolls off you, and start visualizing the outcomes you want? And so he does an amazing job of painting a path and really giving you tactics to do this. So highly encourage you to take a listen. Sales leaders, this would be a great book for you to read for yourself, because again, it all starts with you. How are you showing up? What kind of mindset are you adopting? And then bring it forward to your team, because most often I see people hitting the more button and really looking at the metrics. And I would say first check in with yourself and connect with them and find out, how are people doing? How are they operating? How are they showing up? Because once you can correct that, everything else falls into place. So take a listen. Let us know after you read it what results you were able to yield, how you've added this into your daily practice, whether it's visualizations, any affirmations, journal writing, expressing gratitude, because, as a practitioner of this for over 15 years, I can tell you it works. It's part of my life. And it's so great to connect with someone like Justin, where there's a huge alignment, and just acknowledge all the work he's doing and the changes he's making. So enjoy, everyone. We'll see you next time. So I am delighted to bring the one and only Justin Michael to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I never actually thought there would be a moment when I can bring my love and appreciation for the spiritual world to sales. And you've paved that way for us with your most recent book. For those who are watching on YouTube, Attraction Selling. So love to dive in and kind of, if you want to first start us off by, you have Justin Michael's Method 1 and 2, and so where did this come from? Do you think you weren't ready before to release this, or do you think perhaps the world wasn't ready to receive it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I started on this journey in 2006. I'm 44 now, and age is just a number, but I ran into Jack Canfield at a charity auction. It's a long story. The old Neville Goddard Bridge of the Incidents. But I stumbled on this material when I was 26, and I had it in my back pocket because by the time I moved to Silicon Valley, it was really instrumental in getting my mind right to try to get a job. I did not have a college degree. I was in tech sales, and back at the time, 2009, 10, 11, I was getting rejected left and right, auto rejected because there was no degree on the resume. And I had recruiters saying, "Hey, just say you had some college, did night school, something like that." So I just started to visualize and tap back into manifestation, law of attraction, because in 2006 I had met Rhonda Byrne and Jack Canfield and had dinner with Jack
Mm-hmm.
Canfield, and he gave me the secret before it was released to the world. And then 6 weeks later, I ran into Rhonda. So I guess I was living in Southern California, so I guess they're all there, right? Oprah's there, everyone's there. I never ran into Oprah, but I saw a huge gap in the past 4 years in running a coaching business in really the internal mindset. And I figured I really just couldn't change people tactically, working on their outer shell.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more I dove back into quantum mechanics and law of attraction, I found a lot of issues with the writing. I found the best books were all from kind of 1902 to 1952, and they all reference biblical scripture, which is all good, but it hadn't really been modernized since Think and Grow Rich, or As a Man Thinketh, or Science of Getting Rich. And see that focus always emphasis on rich, and so it's very like we need a system to fuse sales and law of attraction. So I pitched my
Mm-hmm.
existing publishers. They weren't really interested. That's all good. And I found this indie publisher in Arizona has like 200 bestsellers, so he was willing to go for it on the third installment of the series. And long-winded answer.
No, that's great. There's a lot of insight into the answer. And so, just when you met Jack Canfield at 26, you said when you were kind of struggling to land that job because you didn't have a degree, that your mind wasn't right to get the job. And so, did you have the awareness that it was your mind, or did you think it was the degree or the lack thereof?
No, I really strangely just had not made the distinction that I wasn't my mind or I wasn't my thoughts. I felt that my
Mm.
mind was a part of me, which comes from this incredible teacher named Sid Banks, the Three Principles. He was like a enlightened Scottish welder in Canada with this incredible experience, mind, consciousness, and thought, right? But I started finding through running into Sid stuff a link between Sid and Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie, and on and on and on and on, and basically all into the Eastern philosophies and autobiography of a yogi and Steve Jobs' favorite book. But we're basically not our thoughts, we're not our mind, we're not our body, we're the consciousness behind the universal energy, right? So sales is about going and sitting and trying to contact 100 people in one day and having 95 reject you. And it just it wears away like water carving rock. It's a very negatively charged, rejection dense environment, and it can actually kind of erode mental health over time if you tie into it. And so there's kind of a clue in Sandler where he talks about um, not getting your satisfaction from the job, which is sort of a detachment or Zen concept. So, I got to a point where I could do 100 calls, everybody rejected me, and I would go home and think, still a fine day. Didn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like it just kind of all came together for this book. And um, I mean, Jack Canfield had some great success principles and great elements of kind of life coaching and for life, but then the law of attraction stuff just really took off. The missing pieces I found for sellers is, it wasn't connected. They're either sitting and meditating and visualizing and doing this as a separate thing they do on the side,
Mm.
right? And then, or they really just want to hit their number, get their quota, hit their income. And so the service thing is touted, like Zig Ziglar said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. But those were the two missing ingredients for me. So it's like, yes, you're going to get out of that grinding effort and you're going to be able to track things through mental energy because 95% is internal, but you still have to act. And then the other thing is
Yeah.
acting in your own self interest and sitting around greedily thinking about yourself all the time is
Hmm.
probably also not an
Hmm.
enlightened state. So, what really
Yeah.
brings this material into action is when you want to see transformation in the customer.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And easier said than done, because I think that people say they want that, but yet they're still leading with seller focused metrics and language. And I love the word you use, fused, because you said it fused, like there was a law of attraction and that energy spiritual side, and you fused it together with sales, because it's true. I feel like there's silo. People have these kind of spiritual practices, morning routines, and then they do sales. And it's like when you're not connecting them, you're still relying on external validation and just that external world. But I feel when you can connect them or fuse them, as you say, then you have that real intrinsic motivation and meaning. This is meaningful. And when you start from the inside, that's what projects to your prospects, your audience, but it's in a way that's truly authentic.
Sales itself can be a spiritual activity, and you can love prospecting, and you can approach it with curiosity and empathy and in a spirit of giving, and it can be life affirming and fun and enjoyable. And it sounds crazy, but if you read the trilogy, you'll
Hmm.
see why. Because there's an element when it's hard that if you're coming from a place of being, if someone is awful to you or rejects you or calls you names, you can think from a place of compassion and think, wow, they're having a horrible day and this is not about me. And it bounces off of you and you just feel love and compassion for them, which, trust me, it's hard to do. I've had my life threatened on a call. They said, "Hey, where do you live? I'm going to hunt you down." I said, I don't think I'll give you my address, but have a good one." So I mean, I've been doing it so long. I've been cold calling since I was 21. So, I was running 1,000-person call centers and training fleets of reps by the time I was 29 in different countries. So the brutality of all of that is crazy. So it's like, that book, Michael A. Singer, The Surrender Experiment, which you've been a proponent of, which is, made the rounds on Oprah's shows and things. There's two types of manifestation. There is manufactured manifestation where it's like red Ferrari, or like, hit the number. And then there's surrendered manifestation. And that was the Esther Hicks thing where it's like, what do you want? Why do you desire it? And let the hows be the domain of the universe. And what I always tell my clients, it's never the money, right? There's always a driver. They want to start a college fund, help their family, help a loved one, help a charity, help a cause. And so that's a way cooler driver. What you were just pointing out in the last 3, 4 years kind of just broke me. Like I finally surrendered and started to truly be a giver. And I ran into Bob Berg from The Go Giver, who was responsive about his book, and I was kind of shocked. And Ian Koniak pointed me there too. And there's this book by Melissa Ford called Living Service. You basically play this game. Melissa's game is, I already got paid $500 and I'm sitting with you and I'm just going to help coach you and you're never going to pay me. So if you're never going to pay me, the profit motive is dead. I've killed the profit motive, and now all I can do is like help you and just experience the joy of actually making your life better and giving you trusted advice. And so that was the hardest piece. I was still like a great white shark, even up to a few years ago, where I would just sit and be like, yeah, but I could close you. There's this one technique. I'm still
Hmm.
playing chess. I'm 50 moves in there,
Yeah.
manipulating in some respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a word that is unfortunately synonymous with sales, is that manipulation piece. And I feel when you can surrender and just really detach from the outcome and fully be present. And and I went through, there was probably a pivotal point in my life, and I remember just leading with empathy when I would get treated not the greatest. I never, early in my career, I did take it personally, but then I'm like, my God, I really feel bad for you. You must have had a really bad day in order for you to think it's okay to treat me like that. Like maybe someone's treating you like that's not right. And so my attitude just changed, and I just became very present and just really in tune to the other person. And I feel when you can make that shift, and it's clunky and mechanical at first, but then when you can see the transformation and how what it does to your audience by just inviting them to let go and totally disarm because they feel safe with you, that's for me, that's success.
That's profound. It's true.
How would you say, you said you coached hundreds and thousands of folks in call centers in that real metric driven environment. Now, say they're listening to something like this and they think, you know what, numbers, you look at the conversions on cold calling these days and connection rates and all that, and they're like, our team is down. Like they are, you know, and they probably aren't going to use the word, they're vibrating at a low energy level, but they're down, they're frustrated. So, what's kind of a few basic steps for someone who's considering this or open to this that they can start just maybe that internal work, detaching from the outcome, and just again building that resilience, but also that in service mindset.
Yeah, so, it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. There's fear and there's love and there's love and there's hate. And it's like you think that to be strong in sports or in sales, like it's a macho thing or it's a bold thing or it's about power. But the truth is that you become kind of a gentle giant. I mean, Khalil Gibran said that the most massive characters in human history are seared by scars. And I always say my scars are on the inside. So, what I mean by this is what you're doing to yourself internally, your self talk, is what will appear on the screen of your life. And that's the craziest part of this. So, um, being grateful for things is a great way to start visualizing the outcome you want to see. There's a fundamental decision you have to make as a human being. Is this a benevolent universe? Right? Like, is this the is this the God of the New Testament or the Old Testament? In essence, like, is nature friendly to my plans? And that's why in my books I talk about pronoia. You have to like see yourself as lucky and see as good things happening. So if you think all this stuff is woo woo, I would invite you to listen to like the hardest core David Goggins interviews. One, interestingly, he doesn't drink coffee. Now, it's fine if you do, just don't go crazy with it. And he also, after all the self, beating and everything he talks about all crazy, he's very loving and kind and like kind of a quiet soul underneath that whole exterior. Right. So even he has figured out, I think, these principles. So the whole idea of like get hard and rah rah is changing. And so you have to be willing to tap into that, feminine energy and the duality of sensitivity and peace and joy and love, because these are the highest frequencies and energy levels on the planet. And think of the Dalai Lama, think of Gandhi, think of Martin Luther King. I mean, these folks were just joy and love and service. And so if you're not willing to go there, this may be a hard book for you. Uh, but if you want freedom from suffering and you want to love your job and you want to see your income explode, this is the only way I found.
Hmm. Yeah, and it is a transformation, and I would say it does take time. But the feminine energy, because for me, masculine is my go-to, and I've reversed that because for me, when I look at, I always say, become aware of your awareness. And when I look at how I'm acting, how I'm my body language, and if it goes to masculine, I know that I'm in a situation that I'm uncomfortable in because that's easy for me. And so when I can switch and I can be softer, more empathetic, more curious about the other person, like that's not organic, but I push myself to go there. Now it's regular, but I remember those mechanical moments of doing that. But for me, Justin, and this is where it might be different, is I wanted to change. Like the desire to change was there because I was aware of what I was doing. So what would you say for those who are like, well, why would I go through this anyway? Like it's tough, it's woo woo or whatever they're gonna say, but like, do you feel that the desire to change has to be there first? Or do you think if you do these actions and you start seeing a bit of a change in results and maybe feeling different about yourself, that in itself might be worth, the effort?
So I think you need to find the answer, whether it's through quantum mechanics and neuroscience, or whether it's through faith and spirituality, or whether it's through talking to people that have achieved a level of income or success, or reading their biographies and seeing what makes great people tick in your estimation, what you consider great. And I'll also mention, just for the sake of egalitarian, that things like masculine and feminine are just a human construct, but often it's like the mother, right, as in the mother earth, or the nurturing energy versus that warlike aggression energy.
Mm-hmm.
um, to clarify this stuff, we know the brain has something like 70,000 thoughts a day. I read another study that debunked that, so it said it's 7,000. Anyway, it's a lot. So count to 7,000. Good luck. And it's primarily negative to protect us. So wherever you
Mm-hmm.
believe, whether it's evolution or creation, we were in a world not too long ago with saber-toothed tigers and just a lot of fight or flight syndrome, living in caves, however you look at it. And so you get a cold call and you're triggered into this this croc brain. You know what I mean? So we're
Mm-hmm.
designed as these reactive machines. And so if all you're doing all day is negatively thinking about yourself and beating yourself up inside and putting yourself down and limiting yourself, that starts
Mm-hmm.
to affect the neuroplasticity of the brain. It starts to imprint and groove in. So to the naysayers and skeptics of this book, it's like, if you're more positive, you're going to be more magnetic and charismatic, whether any of this stuff is true or not. People gravitate toward, you know, supportive, positive people, like Zig Ziglar
Hmm.
again, altitude, your attitude determines your altitude. Now, to break it down to what I actually believe is, I actually believe that you are like a tuning fork that can move into infinite quantum parallel universes through a quantum field. And I really think the word currency, which actually means money, it's an electrical current, just like a current in electromagnetics moving through a field like gold or a conductor. You become the insulator when you have resentment and vindictiveness and regret and
Hmm.
all these things, they just tighten down. So what I'm doing in this book in the first chapter is like, this guy David Barry calls it a resentment audit. Find everyone who bothers you and bless them and praise them and visualize good
Hmm.
for them. And that's the basis of Alcoholics Anonymous and a lot of their faiths, is just, you got to get yourself right internally.
One thing you said in the book was, if I think about, the negative self-talk we have and just what that does, that's the starting point, and then how our behavior, our actions follow suit, but also what it does to those around us. But you say, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. So what are you referring to when you say that, or who are you referring to?
Yeah, so there's a lot of origin stories of how the world began, but some of the oldest folks are down in, like, the Maori and like the Star people from really what's modern day New Zealand. And whether you believe in Pangea or ancient astronauts or how you think we all got here, passed down through Hawaiian tradition is this prayer or blessing, which is called Ho'oponopono. And there's a book by Joe Vitale called Zero Limits about this psychologist, or yeah, named Hugh Len, who was healing patients by just saying this to their charts and not even seeing them. So whether you believe that's true or not, one of the most powerful forces in the world, forgiveness. And then I started studying, Jesus, and he never even condemned anyone. So he didn't even need to forgive. But all of us, we live lives of judgment and condemnation of ourselves and then outwardly as well. So one of the strongest things you can do in a meditation, and I say use sacred music tuned to 1,000 years ago, which is 432 hertz for the letter for A. So for the A note, instead of the 440 hertz modern tuning, listen to music on YouTube or Spotify on 432 hertz, 528 hertz, these miracle tones that align with the body's magnetic field and chakras. I wanted to add one more point from the last question, which is, it's not, you know, it's desire plus non-resistance equals desired outcome. And this is also David Bayer. I love his stuff. But um, how are you going to raise your frequency? How are you going to sit in place and raise your frequency? Being thankful, thank you, giving love. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And that's taking radical 100% responsibility. These are uncomfortable things to say and feel and live. But if you do that, wow, it will change your outlook. And when you think differently, you feel differently, you act differently. That psychocybernetic loop, it's really powerful.
And that's beautiful. And so for me, I remember Tony Robbins talking about incantations, and when he's just chanting that in that, real exasperated state. But what I've added to my journaling is that one line, and I say it to myself. And I just think that you're completely forgiving yourself, kind of getting that clean slate so that you can show up in service of others, and you're not carrying any resentment, any, even something that's in your subconscious that you don't think you're hanging on to, you're projecting it. And just so we can back it out for the audience who's listening, and you mentioned a few solfeggios, so maybe you want to just let them know what that is in terms of the 432, 528. And just when you compare that or align that with some form of affirmation, writing something down, what it does, the combination of the two, to the result.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of mashups and fusing concepts together to get a new concept. So what I did back in 2009, which I end up calling musifestation or music manifestation, is I use the frequencies to calm my brain, to move the brain from the beta focus state into alpha or theta. Theta is closer to sleep. So the alpha state. And this is the state that Edison invented in. Salvador Dali famously held a key and slept on a metal plate. Edison slept with a metal ball. So if they start to fall asleep, they wake up. So they're between the two brain states, moving from consciousness into unconsciousness. So it's kind of like self hypnosis. And it just puts you into a state that's more amenable for self-suggestion. And at that point, once you change the brain frequency, all the techniques work, whether that's transcendental meditation to hypnosis to affirmations, incantations. What did T. Hart Ecker call them? Declarations. You could journal during that, right? I even do it while prospecting sometimes. Is just experiment with different solfeggio tones to see what relaxes me and lets me focus. I had a client that had a brain injury in a car accident. He was having ADHD phenomena, and he found a tone, a binaural beat, which he could just study, and it was like world changing for him because he was working on entrepreneurial stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm actually going to include a show note of that for those listening because it is powerful and it's priming for even when you have your AirPods and you're doing something, your being is different. You're showing up as different because it's almost like it's infusing in your whole body, and I think it's very powerful. So, yes, I would definitely highlight that. You mentioned before. Well, we talked a bit about um, priming the brain, self sabotage, our language, our words. Can you talk to us about the RAS and how that like A, what is it? And B, how as salespeople can we really control? Think about, those who have to get on the phone and make 100 dials or whatever they're doing. Like that's a tough job. But how can you just get into that mindset of a positive one that's going to support you? And I'll just give you a quick backstory. I was on a coaching call yesterday, and she was all looking for the tactics and the answers and the responses. And I knew it wasn't that. I knew that she had some real negative self-talk and just the language. It was like, well, this is never going to happen. And these guys are never going to. And it was just this real extreme. And I'm like, we're not getting into tactics because there's something there that's programmed. And then again, she's going to find a lot of that. So for those listening, can you walk us through kind of what is the RAS, how it works, and what we can be doing to really make sure that we are setting ourselves up for the best chance possible of success or just even a transformation for our audience?
Yeah, so everything I bring up, if it seems out there woo woo, I want to give you a chance to actually verify it in the physical universe. So on the music stuff and sound, look up cymatics, which is Cymatics, cymatics, and go look on YouTube of different sound waves, solfeggio frequencies played on water with gold leaf or with sand on a plate. And it creates sacred geometries in the flower of life and all sorts of interesting, like 64 tetrahedron grids. And it actually is real physics. So it actually is changing your DNA and it's aligned with your DNA structure. Now let's look at the reticular activating system, the RAS. Your brain, I mean, again, there's debates and debunks of how much of your brain you use, but let's imagine maybe 5% or 10%. But it's the most powerful supercomputer on the planet. Even now, one brain, a baby's brain, is still more powerful than all the AI strung together. I think Google has one quantum computer that's getting close. What happens is if you form an idea or a repetition or a thought in the mind, you make a decision. Your brain subconsciously, 95% of your processing power under the surface starts to look for phenomena to verify that. It's similar like if you get a Volkswagen Jetta and you see them everywhere, but it's working beneath the surface and it's billions of synapses and neurons firing to figure this out. So that was kind of a Jack Canfield thing too, is like if you set an impossible goal, you're likely to hit it because your brain's going to work behind the scenes to hit it. And the link between the brain and the mind and the soul, I mean, we can get into all of that, right? Because if you go even further to the law of attraction and quantum physics, there's an experiment of the atom where the observer effect changes the position of the subatomic particles. So like we're like these toroidal energy centers, and as we change our frequency, it's actually touching the entire universe. And so if something bad happens in life, and I know there's circumstances you can't control, so I don't offend anyone. Let's say you have someone who, like, I don't know, is against you, you have a hater. I wouldn't know about that. Anyway, that's being created internally to yourself because inside of yourself can only be love and pure love. And so it's some kind of disturbance in your own quantum field. So um, I don't know. I went in a whole spiral on that question. I might not have even answered it.
No, well, I think you did. You said that basically your thoughts, whatever your thoughts, your programming, the brain, the reticular activating system is looking for evidence to support that. And so a lot of times people are starting negative and this is never going to work. And then all of a sudden their first deal goes wrong or they don't pick up the phone. You're like, see, there it is again. And so how can we just flip it? Because the brain doesn't know the difference between truth and not truth. And just say, hey, this is gonna be an amazing day. The next 5 calls, I'm gonna get conversions or whatever that is. But again, that initial programming, the RAS is gonna look for evidence to support that. And again, within your control. So I just feel it's a bit of a reframe, but I feel people's natural default and tendency, it's well, not I feel it's proven that it goes to the negative.
It's true. And there's a whole theory that came out of The Secret, which is you got to control your moods and all your thoughts every day. And I have a process which is inspired by 50 Cent. I read a lot of different stuff, but he got shot in the face 9 times and lived. And I think after that, you're kind of going like, I am the miracle. And you kind of know you will. And you have a big vision for God wanted you to be on the earth. You know what I mean? It's pretty positive. So if you have a negative thought, I'm not worthy of this deal, I'm not good enough to call the sea level, just flip it around. I am worthy to call the sea level. I am worthy of the deal. Start catching that thought and using it as fuel and flipping it. The beauty is your point of attraction is your chronic state. It's not the vicissitudes. It's not the ups and downs of feeling bad and good. It's not your moods, but it is your basic core beliefs about yourself, your identity, and who you believe you are. And so permanent decisions about yourself are so powerful. I always talk about the atomic habits chain smoker analogy. You're doing like 2, 3 packs a day. Okay, try the patch. I'm a chain smoker, but I'm trying non-smoking. Well, sellers are like, I'm a 100K base. I'm a 100K. Well, a child doesn't say, I'm a crawler. I'm not a walker. I'm not ready to walk. It crawls, it walks, it runs, it jumps, it swims, it learns English, it learns another language. It's quantum, like that U squared Price Pritchett. It's going quantum. And then you get to be about 25 years old or 30 and you get your sales job and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get to 100K. It's the best I'll ever do. And you just kind of lock in. That's kind of insane, right? Like the sane abundance mentality is just you're going to keep growing. You might have to side hustle or find different income streams, but there's always an abundant, prosperous path forward for salespeople. They're very disciplined. Often they come from sports, the arts. They know how to rehearse. So that's why, like my book, especially in chapter 1, early in the book, is just techniques, just a bunch of stuff you can do to get disciplined at this stuff. But yes, make a decision that you're worthy. Make a decision that you're a 500K person. Don't decide you're the chain smoker. You
Yeah.
know.
And that language is that you identify with that language. And that's why language is so important. And even when when I do some training, when I do the pre-interview calls and they're like, this is a tough deal. This is a tough sell. Our product is very expensive. And then we work together and go, how can we reframe that? Because you're projecting that scarcity into them and you're going to hit the discount button before you've even finished giving the quote because you're feeling that. They don't feel that. If you've offered enough value and it solves the problem they're looking to solve, they'll pay whatever you need for it.
Exactly. Athletes in the Olympics, they visualize the run, they visualize winning the trophy. The F1 drivers, they spend time visualizing the turns. They run the turns in the simulator in their head. They drive the course before they do. Salespeople tend to figure out, okay, let's do a pre-mortem. What could go wrong? And let's obsess on all the ways it'll go wrong. And then let's cover off on all the enemies and the frenemies. And like the whole sales account planning is like figuring out all the ways to attract the problem. Imagine you're thinking, hey, it only took 2 decision makers to get that deal done. It got signed earlier. They decided it was a priority and not to repave the parking lot and actually invest in your widget. Like thinking of the outcome you want to see happen, marinating on that. I just haven't seen a lot of people apply this directly to sales in the last 20 to 30 years. I've never seen someone with 20 years of sales experience and decades worth of metaphysical adventures put 2 and 2 together to really just give you like the playbook for doing this on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're the
Prospecting
trailblazer that
is,
did it.
I think so. I mean, there is one other book I found once. I'm not sure it has a few reviews, but I don't know if it posits like enjoy selling via attraction, because like I love The Go Giver and I love all the books about service, but then it's like okay, now we're back to prospecting, and it's like I don't know, it's the salad of the dinner, brushing your teeth, or taking out the trash. It's sort of the painting the fence, wax on, wax off. But I remember this guy, Barry Ryan, he did curiosity selling. And people ask me, how did I weather 20,000 hours on a phone, just decades on a phone? And I collected baseball cards as a kid. And I just started to become fascinated with the vignettes and the human stories of other people. I started to be interested in strangers and the human condition and what's powering this person and what's their struggle, what are they about. I actually started to care.
Yeah, genuinely care.
And that it just took time, I burned out enough that on the opposite side of burnout, I was like, well, this is who I am. So this is what I'm going to do. And it's not what you are. You're not a salesperson. Don't identify, right? But in the moment, you're a person of service to the prospect on the other side of the phone. They feel it. And you're not detached like Zen detached, but when you don't give an F that you're there, they feel like you don't care about it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And when you look at pattern interrupts, that is one, because the part of the brain, the limbic, that makes the decision, it has no concept for language. It's emotion driven. And so, but what you're saying, Justin, and you do it authentically and you live by it. But that's why you can't fake it till you make it. You have to become this person to really elicit that feeling in your audience. Otherwise, you're just a phony kind of.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Um, I actually interviewed an Olympian once, and I talked about visualization, and she said, "Karen, it's so much more than visualize. We activate all senses." So she said, "I smell the track, I hear the audience, I see myself." And even we were watching the Olympics together, and she said, "Look at his body language." She's like, "He is not confident. He's not in this state." But she said, "You can't in this level. You can't rely solely on visualization." And I love that, because I think about putting yourself in that state, that scent. And even what do you do? Like, do you have a perfume? Do you have cuffs or something that you put on before you do something hard, or that's really empowering, that again creates that association with that task, so you almost become that person? It's still you, but in order to succeed at a level that's higher than you probably would normally operate at.
Yeah, so I came up performing and getting on stages and playing guitar and singing, and I actually sang backup for Kenny Loggins and was on TV in front of 40 million people. So I got through the stage fright of that. So similar to you, I'm very comfortable talking to like 200 people, but I really just try to be in the moment and think about my audience. Think about like a single audience member and think, what would I want to experience right now? Or what would I find is cool or interesting to create the charisma? Um, yeah, I also just realized that humans are more scared than I am. Like most people are living in, 37 levels of fear, so they're worried that you're going to bomb as the public speaker. They're worried that you're going to waste their time presenting or, demo board them with another, boring presentation. So when you realize that they're more afraid than you are, even sea levels, it humanizes the process. And it's why it's so important to set the tone and to lead, to believe in yourself, to own it, and to think that things are going to go right and think that people are going to like you and just speak from the heart, and that'll take care of everything else, really.
Well, there's head, heart, and gut, right? And I feel like a lot of salespeople are all head, and I definitely was head. And when you can shift to the heart and really make it, I teach something, the OPP, the other person's perspective, and really look at, like, what do they want to get out of this? Like, how can I just truly align? And they haven't even shared it with me. I'm starting with assumptions. But even, if they've come to a talk, like they've left their house, they might have had to get childcare, they might have, had to endure traffic, all these things I'm considering, that when they leave, they're going to be transformed, because it's not about me, it's about them. And I think when you can embody that level of others and just being truly in service, A, you're not nervous, and B, they leave getting exactly what they want and more.
Yep, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's really hard to put this into words because people think they are in service. And so what I encourage people to do in the book is to visualize the outcome on the other side. So imagine they buy from you and do a 6-figure or 7-figure deal, and now they've installed it, and now they're really happy and they're getting results and they're referring you and recommending and sending you new clients. I mean, I've just never seen anybody talk about that in practical application before. I've never seen a dream board or reality board, as I call it, with outcomes for other people on it. It probably exists, and if you wish good things for your family, I think you're there, or your church, or your society at large, true, your mission. But sellers tend to be, I don't know, militantly focused on the number, and it's not their fault. Like the CROs and the boards are breathing down their neck. They're like, you got to close, 1.3 million this year. Like you're 500,000 off target. And of course, you sit there and you obsess on like, I have to hit 500K, and so you create friction in the field and you push it out even further, and now you're grinding and you're caffeinated and all this stuff. And really, if you just got a good night of sleep, I say in the book, like, go walk on the ocean, swim in the ocean, swim in the lake, like get into nature and the flow of water and fresh air. And that changes your magnetic field as well. And there's a resonance to that too. Even in the earth has the Schumann resonance. So when you're earthing or walking through the earth, it's very powerful.
Hmm. And just when you painted that picture, Justin, of the CRO kind of, doing CRO stuff and metrics and everything, and that just creates this perpetual cycle of inviting the salespeople to stay in that caffeinated beta state to kind of regurgitate what they're saying because it's fear driven, and then they just get like in this negative cycle on repeat. So what message would you have for sales leaders to say, like, look, if you want to get a different outcome, if you want to retain your team, and if you also want them to show up in a way that they want to be here, like, what are some things leadership can do so that they're not these dictators leading with fear and just perpetuating an already existing negative cycle?
Yeah, so there's something to be said for like mental health days and taking breaks, but creating the culture that is more positive in and of itself, you know? So these thoughts may be radical, but helping shift people into pronoia and seeing that good things are coming and focusing on, one sales analysis, that's a Craig Elias technique, not just, deal loss reviews. um, how could this deal go right, using language like that, planning for success. I had this amazing manager once named Jim Mangello. He was the GM at Swerve, and he said, visualize the goal, germinate the seed, and plan for success. And he would just constantly just say this. And I'm thinking, like, wow, that's it. He would always come in and he'd say, like, what's the biggest deal the company's ever done? He's like, okay, I'll do a bigger one. What would be the ideal deal? Okay, that's the one I'll do. And he would just envision exactly what he wanted to do. And then he would go do it. It was like a very Babe Ruth, like point to the stands moment. So, helping inspire your team that they have this supercomputer of a brain and they have this infinite intelligence they can tap into and it's unlimited. And there's no such thing as a junior. Like any rep can grab a hold of this thing and go for it and swing from the fences and achieve something great in sales in this quarter. Using these techniques, you have to have faith and you have to have persistence. And no one doubts that. Everyone says persistence, but you have to persist in believing in this stuff. And that's the cult like element where it's like, oh, that sounds like a cult. That's Kool-Aid, right? But just like a magnetic field, it's as easy to track $5 as 5 million, but there's a gestation period. And I read Science of Getting Rich 1,000 times. And if I'm a zealot for that, I don't know. I mean, Rhonda did. And gratitude was the longest chapter. I ran into her. She's like, what's the longest chapter of the book? I said, gratitude, right? Because I wanted to burn that into my brain, into my DNA level, to just live like that from a place of oneness and gratitude and right thought and action and consistency. And then I attracted that massive result. So what happened is I went to the valley, got rejected for 3 months, got the same 45K author, and then my kid brother who works at Google's like, hey man, like, you're lucky you didn't have that, like, what do you got? And then I think it could have been like 72 hours later to a week, I got the call, and it was for like $100,000 role, double the income, from Sean Parker, who's like the youngest billionaire at the time. Yeah, so I mean, that for me was just fully surreal because I was actually shocked. And then I believed it.
And sometimes that's what it takes. And I would say anyone listening who is kind of listening to us rolling your eyes, give it a shot. Like, put your money where your mouth is and just change that initial thought. And what you said there is just like if you're in that world of prospecting or just metrics driven activities, add this like habit stack, add this to it. So how can you in your morning, what kind of morning ritual, visualization, journaling, anything that can you add in addition to definitely reading Justin's book, Attraction Selling, but to get that consistency so they can burn it into their brains that they go, that they're leading in service, that their language is positive. And even what I've started doing after this, I was doing a little bit before, but your book has reinforced it, is in my gratitude journal, I write the deal. I'm already thankful for the deal, implementing the deal. The deal hasn't closed, but I'm aligning energy to the, as if it in the present to influence the future. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm talking as if, well, I can't wait to work with this team and the transformation. And, the approval process was so seamless, all this stuff. And it's like, of course it's going to happen. Like you're just, there's such this level of certainty and it's, again, the brain doesn't know the difference. So you're kind of tricking it. But again, all your action and your energy you're forcing it to go high versus, well, what if they don't? You're introducing doubt. Everything falls behind that. And even if you have another call with them, you're not leading with confidence. It's like, you want to partner with me. You're this kind of like wounded little bird going, please help me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things is if you start living this way, you start to see the signs and synchronicities, you know?
Mm.
So, I met Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was 19, and the day I started my coaching business, I went to the Fairmont in Los Angeles. I know he goes there a lot, but he sat down for breakfast like 3 feet from me. I didn't bug him or anything. It's just an interesting sign. Everything is really interesting. Like I was just doing like a wealth affirmation the other day, and these kids were playing at a school, and they kicked a green ball over the side of the fence, and they yelled to me, and I picked it up and I threw it to them. And then I thought, at that exact moment I said that, boom! It just like little things like this are so interesting. So you start to get this metaphysical connectivity to all matter, space, and time, and you start to look forward to the future because good things are coming to you. And instead of dreading Monday and dreading the job and dreading those calls you have to make, you're like, yeah, that's a phone, that's a cash register, like pick that up and get a sale. And then you start to enjoy and love doing sales. And that's where I got to a point where it was like the only mistake someone could make was to pick up a phone, because I had a way to process every interaction within selling. I've just done so many different iterations. So I love what you're saying about the deal flow, acting from the end in mind, like living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. I've got people I've coached on this stuff that have hit President's Club. This guy Luke Shalom, he's 29 now, and I think he's made like 500,000 off these techniques. I mean, it's real. It does translate into dollars, but it's more important like how you feel and becoming a self-actualized human and learning to love yourself and suffering less, and you're gonna get a lot of benefit and feeling of freedom. Freedom is not something you find in the natural world through being a billionaire. There's so many myths. It's something that's found internally in your own mind through this walk and through this path.
Hmm. And I would say, not even sales, this is who you become in life. And it's just such a more fulfilling, place to walk. And just a quick story, because I teach this to my kids all the time. They're my little guinea pigs. And we were in the grocery store the other day, and there was the bakery, and they wanted donuts, and there was no donuts. And they know to reframe, they know not to say the negative stuff. And the minute we were about to leave, the woman just comes out of the door of the bakery, slid open, and she put a box of 2 donuts, just 2 in it. And she walked back in. So prior to that, there was no donuts, there was no woman. And I just said, guys, like, that was the universe handing it to this. And the nice thing is, they're not surprised. They're like, of course it is, mommy, because we asked for this. We, with not their words, but we manifested it. I'm like, of course, because I believed. I'm like, it's going to happen. I always say, like, life is happening for us, and I just think when you adopt that mentality, you're not a victim. You're not going, like, a lot of times it's like, how you doing? Well, we'll see what the day, how it unfolds and what happens. And it's like, you're just relinquishing control for the day to take you. How can you set a stance, a precedence of the greatness that you're going to attract because of how you show up? And that's intention. And that's where all the methods that you've indicated in your book, like, we have to do those religiously, consistently, so that we're showing up, starting with ourselves, but then just creating an aura around you that people want to get behind that. And sometimes it's this unspoken, they're like, I don't know, but like, there's a magnetic attraction that people gravitate to you. That's the inner work. That's the level that you're vibrating on. And that's, in terms of leadership, that's who people get behind.
I think you're right. It's a more peaceful way of living, and I was a little stunned. I thought it would be like a brand risk to release this book, and everybody I know, there's like 11 million sellers. I mean, there's been tens of millions of sellers back. I mean, hundreds of millions, and they all are hip to some of this. Like, they've read Think and Grow Rich, they've read Dale Carnegie, they've checked out like As a Man Thinketh by James Allen was huge on influencing Tony Robbins, and it's actually just really been widely accepted already in a way that I was kind of shocked, because I thought like it might, you know, people might point the finger and just kind of think that I'm a charlatan, but I back it with a lot of science and I give a lot of practical applications. And you can access this book if you're an atheist or if you're religious. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just some observations I've noticed in the last 20 years on how this universe tends to work.
Mm-hmm. But you're also living proof. I mean, you're sharing your journey of things unfolding, unraveling as a result of this. And I think the universe rewards risk, right? You took a risk and it benefited you and benefited many of readers, future readers, to just shift their mindset and, come at things from a different angle, different perspective.
It's really true. By the time I turned 30, I decided to move to Silicon Valley, and then I went to St. Louis, then I went to New York, and then I went to Seattle and back to LA. And I love that Wayne Dyer quote that you shouldn't die with your music still inside you. So
Mm.
we have gifts that come to us, whether they're God given, DNA, both. And a lot of us, it's like growth mindset and fixed mindsets. Here's where I vary with Carol Dweck is we tend to work on our talents, the things that are harder. We tend to grind on those and, oh, I'm getting better at piano. And then you see the Chinese kid at 7 playing, Rachmaninoff perfectly. It's like, wait, I've been playing piano for 7 years. So like I share this story, but in my third grade class, I mean, this teacher, she had been there 40 years. And she says, of every kid that came through the school, you're the best writer. I thought, oh, you say that to all the kids, right? I never thought twice of it. Then my 10th grade English teacher, like, yeah, you're like writing at a PhD level already. And they had a parent teacher conference and all this stuff. And I never even touched it. And at 40, I got my first publishing deal. I ghost wrote my first book. And so why didn't I pursue that? What is the thing that you're gifted at, that everyone says you're an expert at, that you're God-given talent at, that you're not working on because it's too easy? It just comes naturally. And then my friend Ron, he was a mentor. He had a plastics business. He swept the floor, and then he had tens of millions. He came to me. He's like, "You're a genius at communication," and I was like, "Great, I'll be broke." So I didn't know how to apply it, So I encourage everyone on the call to read the book, think about what is your real gift, and then go leverage that. Make it hard. Go Rocky Balboa on that thing, and then you'll be great. You'll master it, and there's greatness there. Like you're doing that with the public speaking thing. I'm putting out all these books. You risk, you stick your neck out there. You're gonna, they're gonna chop your head off. But the good people come out of the woodwork is way more good and support than you could imagine.
And you won't, and you just, the resilience you build up trying and putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations. Like, I mean, it's just building courage and strength and resilience that there's no downside.
Exactly.
One quote I'm going to end with that I've again have added to my journaling is, I am not my thoughts, mind, or body. I am the formless coming into form.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a synthesized blend because I love to over attribute it. It drives my publisher nuts because I just love people like to steal my stuff. So yeah, understand who you are. We are spirits in a material world, to quote Sting, the Police. We are uh, spirits having a human experience. And if that's the case, it changes everything. The law of attraction is actually the law of love. And there's other laws too, like the law of assumption, the law of rhythm. There's all these universal laws. And so that's why I love Neville Goddard, Another Place to Go, The Power of Awareness. It's like before you go to sleep every day, imagine your life as if it had been lived another way, or imagine the future as if it's already happened and be grateful for it now. And the number one question I get asked in coaching people on this work is, I'm dissatisfied with who I am now and what I have now. But if all matter, energy, space, and time is already created and everything's infinite, you just have to tune into the life that you want. You have to shift into that beingness. And it really does start with being grateful for everything in the here and now, and then a knowing and faith, because above faith is knowing that God will be good to you and good things are coming. And and living in that is like flying because you're falling off a cliff. You're truly just diving off a cliff and knowing you're going to fly. And I'm not encouraging that behavior, obviously, but metaphorically, right? The things that hold us back. The cave you fear to enter contains the treasure you seek, to Joseph Campbell. And I probably put that 7 times in my book.
Yeah. And Rhonda Byrne said that as well, just that level of knowing. And that's when the manifestation happens, because the universe doesn't respond to ambiguity. It needs laser focus and crystal clarity from you, and then it will respond. So even she said that level of knowing, like just like conviction that, like, yeah, this is happening. Of course it's rehappening to me. So you just reinforce that, which is great.
She did a new book called The Greatest Secret. It's really good, kind of Eastern philosophy based, and it's just about welcoming even negative emotion. It's about awareness, and it's really good. I'm just grateful for all the people who came before and have the opportunity to be a vessel for this work and to get to help a lot of people and transform their lives. I've had experiences where people were on the brink, were literally going to take their own life, and I said something or did something that changed them. They came back later and told me that's not what I specialize in, but that's really an honor to help someone. And I've had people who have literally, radically transformed their income or finally went off and started their own business,
Mm-hmm.
regain their confidence. So, I mean, this may sound pitchy for coaching or something, but it worked for me and it works for others and clearly worked for you. So it's
Mm-hmm.
exciting times. Change
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah. No, it's been amazing. I just am very grateful that you kind of came into my life, and it was very, I don't even know how, we just kind of connected on LinkedIn, and just the sequence of events and the books and now the podcast. And I don't think it's any coincidence. I know it's definitely synchronicity. And so I want to thank you for just being part of the journey. And I look forward to, staying in touch. And I know that this message that you're sharing is going to continue to touch people in different ways. And I know timing is a big part of it too. You have to be ready, or maybe you're going to say something in a different way, or some of the quotes or books you've read that's going to just hit someone and be like, oh my God. Meanwhile, their coach or their friend or their husband or wife has been saying the same thing, but the way in which you said it, or the story in which you shared, just might be what it takes for them to make that first move.
Yeah, it's truly an honor, and I've really been a amalgamator or synthesizer. I love Malcolm Gladwell, so I read really widely, and I have this brain that just kind of crunches it all down. And I have people come to me and said they've read every book ever written on this stuff. They've been to every fire walk and
Yeah.
shaman and all this stuff. But this is the first time it really made sense because I've put it in such a modern vernacular. So thanks for the work that you're doing. Thanks for highlighting this here, and hopefully we'll get to help a lot of people. And yeah, grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you. Grateful for you as well, Justin. Thanks for listening in, everybody. We're going to include a lot of the links. I would encourage you, if you haven't picked up his book, Attraction Selling, Sales Leader, this is a great one for you to start with, and then really share it with your team, embody it so that they can also continue with that mindset, because it all starts up top. If you can connect on the inner, you win the outer. So definitely encourage you there. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.